My wife's one that got away was back in town. She gave me a heads up, and I was the one who suggested picking him up from the airport. Her old flame politely said, "Oh, that's too much trouble." But in the end, the three of us went out to dinner together. When he tried to grab the check at the end of the meal, my wife had already settled it on the sly. Later, a friend asked me, "The one that got away is back. Doesn't that bother you?" Honestly, it really didn't. I was watering my newest obsession, a succulent I just picked up from the flower market downstairs, when my wife, Chloe, called, "Hey, honey, I need to tell you something." Chloe's voice was calm, that familiar blend of professional crispness and underlying warmth that I knew so well. I said, carefully tilting the watering can. "Go ahead, I'm listening. Is it a last-minute business trip? Or do you have a dinner thing tonight?" There was a 2-second pause on her end. "Neither," she said. "It's Dylan. Dylan Vance. He's back. Dylan Vance." The name was like a glass marble that had been lost in a corner for years, suddenly kicked by an unseen foot, rolling right up to my toes. I stopped what I was doing. He was my wife's one that got away, a legendary figure in our social circle. The golden boy since we were kids, top grades, movie star looks, old money. He'd gone on to study abroad and made a killing on Wall Street. An honest-to-God master of the universe. Everyone had assumed he and Chloe were the endgame. Then, not long after he left the country, Chloe married me. A guy who, in everyone else's eyes, was utterly ordinary. A guy some even whispered was a trophy husband, living off her success. "Oh, he's back," I said, my tone as flat as if we were discussing what to get for dinner. I even had the presence of mind to poke one of the succulent's fleshy leaves. "When does he land? I can book a reservation somewhere, a welcome-back dinner." Chloe seemed to falter on the other end, probably thrown by my reaction. In the script she'd imagined, I was supposed to go silent, ask a million questions, maybe show the slightest hint of anxiety or insecurity. Too bad she married me. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m. flight," she said, a trace of an unreadable smile in her voice. "Don't worry about a restaurant. I just wanted to let you know. After all, he's him, and you're you." That last line was meant to be reassuring. I smiled, setting the watering can down and leaning against the balcony railing. The afternoon sun was warm, and I could hear the laughter of kids playing in the courtyard below. "No, that won't work," I said, all business. "The man's coming from halfway across the world. We have to show him some good, old American hospitality. How about this? I'll go with you to the airport tomorrow. It'll show we're a class act. You want to go?" This time, Chloe was genuinely surprised. "Of course," I said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I'm your husband. Your ex. Well, old friend is back in town. Doesn't the reigning champ have to, assert his dominance?" "Kidding." I paused, softening my tone. "I just want those friends of yours who still harbor some romantic fantasies to see that you're happy, that your husband supports you. We're a team. We're in this together." The line went quiet for a long time, so long I thought the call had dropped. Just as I was about to say hello, I heard Chloe's voice, soft and a little thick. "Leo, you're a good man." "Damn right I am," I said, shameless. "Why else would you dump a guy shining like a diamond for a dull rock like me?" "Because a rock stays warm in your hand forever," she said, and then quickly hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, shaking my head with a grin. That woman still gets flustered so easily. Truthfully, I couldn't care less that Dylan Vance was back. A man's greatest confidence doesn't come from his bank account or his job title. It comes from the unwavering certainty that the woman he loves only has eyes for him. And Chloe had given me that certainty in spades. The next afternoon, I pulled our most understated SUV up to the International Arrivals Terminal at JFK with Chloe in the passenger seat. We were right on time. Chloe was dressed in a sharp, beige pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun that showed off the elegant line of her neck. She radiated a "don't mess with me" corporate vibe, but the hand she had looped through my arm was squeezing just a little too tightly. "Nervous?" I murmured, turning to her. She kept her eyes fixed on the stream of people emerging from the gate. "A little," she admitted. "Not because of him, because of the situation. This feels like something out of a bad soap opera." I chuckled. "Relax. With me here, I guarantee it'll play out like a sitcom." She shot me a look, but the corner of her mouth ticked upward. Just then, a small ripple went through the crowd as a tall man in a tailored trench coat pushed a luggage cart through the doors. Even from a distance, I knew it was him. Dylan Vance. He looked more mature than in the old photos, more formidable. A perfectly calibrated smile was on his face as his eyes scanned the crowd, landing quickly on Chloe. In that instant, the light in his eyes was a complex mixture of surprise, nostalgia, and a clear sense of entitlement. He started walking directly toward us. The people around us, sensing drama, were already starting to glance back and forth between the three of us, the air thick with unspoken questions. "Chloe, it's been a long time," Dylan said, his voice a smooth baritone. He opened his arms as if to give her a hug, but Chloe just leaned a little closer to me, her hand still firmly on my arm. She simply nodded and smiled. "It has, Dylan. Welcome back." His embrace landed on empty air. The smile on his face froze for a fraction of a second before he recovered, his gaze shifting to me, filled with appraisal and inquiry. "And this is my husband, Leo Foster," Chloe said, her introduction short and to the point. Taking my cue, I stuck out my hand with a broad, welcoming grin. "Dylan, great to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you. Chloe always said you were the most respectable upperclassman from her college days." I put a little extra emphasis on respectable. Dylan's mouth twitched. He probably expected me to say favorite or unforgettable. He shook my hand, his grip firm. "That's kind of you, Leo. I have to admit, I didn't expect Chloe to get married so quickly." The words were polite, but the subtext was a flashing neon sign. He was implying her choice was rushed, maybe even a mistake. Chloe's brow furrowed, and she opened her mouth to speak, but I beat her to it, adopting a tone of sudden realization. "Man, that's really on me." I slapped my forehead in mock chagrin. I pursued her relentlessly, gave her the full court press. She was probably just worn down and finally said yes to shut me up. "You have no idea, Dylan. I don't have much to offer, but I can cook a few decent meals." I guess I found my way to her heart through her stomach. You know what they say. My bit of self-deprecating humor, half truth and half performance, completely deflated the angsty, what could have been atmosphere he was trying to create. Chloe couldn't help it. She let out a snort of laughter and playfully punched my arm. "Stop it. You're ridiculous." Dylan's expression, however, wasn't so amused. It was like he'd thrown a punch and hit a pillow. He had come prepared with a whole arsenal of power moves and charged looks, only to be completely disarmed by my harmless stay-at-home husband routine. He never imagined that not only would I show zero jealousy or insecurity, but I'd also be the one cracking jokes. This wasn't in his script at all. "Let's get you to the car. It's windy out here," I said cheerfully, taking his luggage cart. "Dylan, I booked a place for tonight to welcome you back. Don't even think about arguing. Just consider it Chloe's treat on my behalf for an old friend." I beamed, my expression so sincere you'd think he really was just some random college buddy. Dylan watched the easy way Chloe and I interacted, the way I casually took her purse from her, then glanced down at the cold, metal handle of his own cart. A shadow passed over his eyes. Finally, he managed a civil smile. "Well, I'd hate to impose, Leo." "No imposition at all." I waved a hand, pushing the cart ahead of us, my voice booming. "We're all family here." Behind me, Chloe hurried to catch up, whispering in my ear, so only I could hear, "You are such a goofball." I gave her a little wink. This was just the appetizer. The main course was yet to come. The restaurant I chose was an exclusive place with private dining rooms, known for its exquisite tasting menus. The ambience was quiet and elegant, the food was art, and the only drawback was the astronomical price. After we were seated, Dylan naturally took the chair next to Chloe and began regaling her with stories of his years abroad, from the high-stakes drama of Wall Street to a ski trip in the Swiss Alps. He was a skilled storyteller, effortlessly showcasing his success and refined tastes while weaving in shared memories with Chloe. "Remember that little coffee shop near the library we used to practically live in? We'd spend whole afternoons there. That fountain pen you gave me, I still use it." He was methodically building a wall between us. On the inside were he and Chloe in their sun-drenched past. On the outside was me, the out-of-place intruder. Chloe was starting to look uncomfortable, trying several times to steer the conversation toward me, but Dylan deftly brought it back to their shared history every time. And me, I didn't say a word. I just sat there, listening with a pleasant smile, and served Chloe. When the seafood course arrived, I shelled the grilled prawns for her, dipped them in the sauce, and placed them on her plate. When the soup came, I ladled a bowl for her, let it cool for a moment, and then passed it to her. My movements were fluid and natural, the product of 1,000 shared meals. Dylan's confident patter started to slow. His gaze kept drifting to my hands as I tended to Chloe, the look of superiority in his eyes slowly morphing into something unreadable. He probably couldn't fathom how a woman as proud as Chloe would so calmly accept such meticulous care from a man. Finally, when a course of seared foie gras was served, Dylan found what he thought was his opening. He gestured to the rich dish on Chloe's plate. I remember you used to have a sensitive stomach. Something this rich probably isn't the best idea. Then he looked at me, his tone carrying a hint of condescending instruction. Leo, you have to be careful with Chloe's health. Diet is everything. Here we go. The main event. Chloe was about to protest, but I placed a hand on hers to stop her, then gave Dylan a look of humble gratitude. You're absolutely right, Dylan. I really need to be more attentive. Thanks for the reminder. My words were agreeable, but my actions told a different story. I picked up a small fork and neatly separated a piece of the foie gras, along with a rich brioche toast point, and moved it to my own plate. Then, I flagged down a waiter who was standing by with a prearranged alternative. He quickly and discreetly replaced her plate with another. Chloe's digestion can be a bit tricky, I explained conversationally. She can't really handle things this rich. But the chef prepared this seared scallop with a citrus reduction for her instead. It's light, full of protein, and absolutely delicious. So, she gets the good stuff and I get the leftovers. As I spoke, I took a bite of the foie gras I'd rescued from her plate and savored it dramatically. Wow, unbelievable. Dylan, you have to try this. Don't be shy. My smooth, practiced maneuver, combined with my enthusiastic foodie persona, completely disarmed him. His carefully constructed, medically backed concern was neutralized by something far more grounded, more intimate, and utterly irrefutable. He could claim I didn't understand finance or art, but he couldn't claim I didn't understand Chloe. Because every word I said, every move I made, sent one clear message. I know her better than you do. Chloe kept her head down, taking small bites of her scallop, but the slight upward curve of her lips and the pink blush creeping up her ears gave her away completely. Round 2, Foster. The rest of the dinner passed in a similar vein, cordial on the surface, but with a roiling undercurrent. When it was time to pay, Dylan, as expected, stood up and pulled out his wallet. I'll get this. My treat, a little welcome home celebration for myself. This was his final, most direct play, using money to broadcast his success and generosity. Of course, I didn't fight him on it. I just sat there, sipping my tea, and watched him walk toward the host stand. Then, I saw the host give him a polite smile and say, "Sir, the bill has already been taken care of by the lady." The host was referring to Chloe, who had excused herself to the restroom a few minutes earlier. Dylan stood frozen, wallet in hand, his expression a priceless picture of shock. It was likely the first time in his life a woman had insisted on paying in front of him, especially this woman, in a moment he had orchestrated to showcase his own power. Chloe walked back to the table, looped her arm through mine, and smiled at Dylan. "We said it was your welcome home dinner. We couldn't let you pay. Next time, it's on you." That, next time, was spoken with the cool, polite distance of a promise that would never be kept. On the drive back, Dylan sat in the back seat, silent. The mood in the car was heavy. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. This golden boy, this master of the universe, was slumped against the window, watching the city lights blur past, his profile looking lonely in the dark. And my wife, sitting in the passenger seat beside me, quietly reached over and laced her fingers through mine. I could feel the warmth of her hand, steady and sure, just like my own. After we dropped Dylan off, Chloe and I went home, and neither of us mentioned his name again. Life went on. I tinkered with new recipes. She managed her latest project. A few days later, I got a call from one of Chloe's best friends, Megan, the unofficial gossip columnist of her friend group. "Leo, are you crazy?" she shrieked the second I answered. "Dylan Vance is back, and you're acting like nothing's wrong." I put the phone on speaker and set it on the counter, continuing to scale the sea bass I just bought. "What would you have me do?" I asked, amused. "Challenge him to a duel at dawn? Or come home and throw a tantrum for Chloe. You. Megan was speechless. I'm worried about you. Do you know what everyone is saying? They're saying Dylan's back to win Chloe back. They're saying that you were just a placeholder. A placeholder? I raised an eyebrow. That's a new one. I must be a pretty durable placeholder, then. It's been 3 years. Leo. Megan's voice went up an octave. Don't you have any sense of danger? This is Dylan Vance we're talking about. Back in the day, Chloe would have done anything for him. Would have done what? I cut her off. The knife in my hand came down with a sharp thwack, severing the fish's head. The sound wasn't loud, but it was decisive. Megan, the past is the past. Chloe is my wife, and I'm her husband. That's all that matters. The other end of the line went silent. I could picture Megan mouth agape. I sighed, softening my tone. Look, I know you mean well, but you need to trust Chloe, and you need to trust our relationship. It's not made of paper. A little gust of wind isn't going to blow it away. But, no buts. I placed the clean fish on a plate and covered it with slices of ginger and scallion. If you really care about us, stop spreading this nonsense. If you got that much free time, maybe you should think about what you want to eat the next time you come over. I want those sweet and sour ribs you make, Megan mumbled, her voice deflated. Done. I'll add it to the list. Gotta go, I'm busy. I hung up without waiting for a reply. When I turned around, Chloe was standing in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, leaning against the frame with an amused look on her face. Impressive, Mr. Foster, she said, one eyebrow arched. Taking on my best friend now. I wiped my hands and walked over, wrapping my arms around her from behind and resting my chin on her shoulder. I mumbled into her neck. She was talking trash about me and trying to undermine my morale. Someone had to let her know who's boss in this house. The light contact made her giggle. Okay, you're the boss. Our great protector. She turned to my arms and cupped my face, her expression turning serious. Thank you for that. For what? For trusting me so completely. I looked into her eyes, my heart melting. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. Silly girl. If I don't trust you, who else is there? Just as we were having our moment, my phone rang, rudely interrupting. I glanced at the screen. The caller ID read, The Dragon Lady, my loving nickname for my mother-in-law. Chloe and I exchanged a look. This couldn't be good. Sure enough, the moment I answered, her panicked voice came through the phone. Leo, are you and Chloe free? You need to come over right now. It's an emergency. My stomach dropped. For my usually unflappable mother-in-law to use the word emergency, something was seriously wrong. Chloe and I didn't waste a second. We jumped in the car and drove to her parents' house. We walked in to find both of her parents sitting stiffly on the sofa, their faces grim. On the coffee table was a doctor's appointment confirmation. Mom, Dad, what's wrong? Is someone sick? Chloe asked, her voice tight with worry. Her mom didn't speak. She just pointed at the paper and then looked at me with an incredibly complicated expression. Leo, she began, taking a deep breath as if steeling herself. I know this is a difficult thing to ask. It might even feel insulting. But for Chloe's happiness and for the good of this family, you have to go get this test done. I picked up the paper and froze. Printed in bold letters were the words, Urology Department, Comprehensive Male Fertility Analysis. Me? Chloe, Mom, what is the meaning of this? Her dad tapped his pipe on the ashtray. Chloe, don't get upset. Your mother felt she had no choice. That Vance boy is back, and the rumors are flying. It's upsetting to us. You and Leo have been married 3 years, and there's been no sign of a grandchild. We started to wonder if there was a medical reason. Her mom jumped in. Exactly. If you two were fine, if you had a child, then we wouldn't have to worry about what anyone says. No matter how successful Dylan is, he's not going to steal a mother away from her child, is he? I finally understood. Her parents had been spooked by Dylan's return and were resorting to the nuclear option, securing the marriage with a baby, thereby eliminating the threat for good. And I was the one being put on trial as potentially defective. Chloe's face was pale with anger. Dad, Mom, how could you think that about Leo? This has nothing to do with him. The reason we don't have kids yet is because we decided to wait, to enjoy a few more years, just the two of us. That's what you say, her mom retorted, slapping her thigh. Chloe, stop defending him. Men can be sensitive about these things. It can be hard to admit. Leo, be honest with me. Is there A problem? I looked at my mother-in-law's anxious, hopeful face, then at my father-in-law's this if your own good expression, and finally at Chloe, who looked like she was about to spontaneously combust. And suddenly, I found the whole thing absurdly funny. I cleared my throat, gently pulling Chloe behind me, and offered her parents my most docile, agreeable smile. Mom, Dad, I understand your concerns. I picked up the appointment slip and placed it carefully in my pocket. I'll go. I'll get the test. Leo, Chloe hissed behind me, stomping her foot. I shot her a look that said, trust me, then turned back to her parents. But I have one condition. They exchanged a glance. Name it. Until the results come back, you're not to bring up Dylan Vance again. You're not to bother Chloe about him. And you're not to let your imaginations run wild. Just sit tight and wait for the results. Deal. My voice was calm and sincere, carrying a weight that was hard to refuse. Her parents hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. Okay, we promise. Then it's settled. I smiled and took Chloe's hand. Mom, Dad, if there's nothing else, we should get going. And don't forget to have some of that chicken soup I brought over this afternoon. It's good for your sleep. With that, I let a still fuming Chloe out of the house. The second we were in the car, she snatched her hand away. Leo, are you insane? How could you agree to their ridiculous demand? It's a complete insult to you. Seeing her so worked up, I couldn't resist reaching out and pinching her cheek. Don't be mad. You're not as pretty when you're mad. You're laughing, she swatted my hand away. Do you have any idea how out of line they were? I do, I said, my smile fading as I turned to her. I know they were out of line, and I know you're defending me. But Chloe, have you stopped to think about why they're doing this? She stared at me, dumbfounded. Because they're scared, I said, starting the car and pulling out of the driveway. They're terrified of losing you, terrified that the happiness you have now is temporary. Dylan's reappearance just magnified that fear. They don't distrust you, and they don't really distrust me. They love you too much. So they're using the clumsiest, most direct, and yes, even hurtful method they can think of to get the reassurance they need. I'm not taking this test because I think there's a problem or to prove anything to them. I'm doing it to show them, through action, that their son-in-law is healthy, mentally and physically, and is more than capable of giving their daughter a lifetime of happiness. I'm doing it so they can finally completely relax. The car was quiet, save for the low hum of the engine. Chloe just looked at me, her eyes slowly filling with tears. Leo, she sniffled. What did I do to deserve you? Did I save the world in a past life? I reached over with one hand and ruffled her hair. Nope, I'm the one who saved the entire universe, just so I could marry you. I looked at the endless stream of traffic ahead, a small smile playing on my lips. Dylan Vance, you might think you're competing with me. You're wrong. You're competing with us, with this family, held together by love and trust. And you can't even find the front door. I went to the clinic alone. I didn't want Chloe to come. A grown man could handle this sort of thing without a whole production. The hospital bustled with activity, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic. I found the urology department easily enough. The doctor was a kind, middle-aged man with a receding hairline. He glanced at my form, pushed his glasses up his nose, and gave me a thorough once-over. You look like you're in great shape, son. What brings you in for this kind of workup? Trouble conceiving. I gave him a half-truthful smile. Not exactly. My in-laws are just very eager for grandchildren. They insisted I get checked out for their peace of mind. The doctor nodded knowingly. I get it. That's how the older generation is. The rest was a series of routine procedures, blood draws, samples, the usual. It was all rather dull. While waiting for the results, I sat on a bench in the hallway, scrolling through my phone. Chloe texted me. How's it going? Nervous? I texted back, terrified. I was so nervous I stress ate 2 extra donuts for breakfast. She replied with a string of ellipses and a laughing crying emoji. Let me know the results the second you get them. Yes, ma'am. Putting my phone away, I people watched. There were other young guys there alone like me, looking lost and anxious. There were couples, too, the wife whispering words of comfort while the husband stared at the floor in silence. Life, I thought, really comes in all flavors. Just as my mind began to wander, a familiar figure hurried past me. I did a double take. Dylan. What was he doing here? He was moving quickly, wearing a mask and a baseball cap pulled down low, as if trying to be incognito. He disappeared into an office down the hall. The sign on the door read, Neurology. A flicker of curiosity sparked in my mind. What was he seeing a neurologist for? Jet lag. Insomnia. The thought came and went. It was none of my business. An hour later, I had my results. I didn't even look at the report, just stuffed it in my jacket pocket and drove straight to my in-laws' house. They were clearly waiting for me, practically pouncing the moment I walked in the door, their eyes wide with a mixture of dread and hope. Well, Leo, the results. What did they say? My mother-in-law's voice trembled. I said nothing. I just pulled the folded papers from my pocket and handed them over. My father-in-law put on his reading glasses, his hands shaking slightly as he took the report. My mother-in-law leaned in close. Two heads huddled together, meticulously deciphering the medical jargon and data. Motility, 100%. What does that mean? Normal morphology, 98%. Is that high? Physician summary. All metrics far exceed normal parameters. A textbook specimen. The air in the room seemed to solidify. My father-in-law slowly raised his head, took off his glasses, and stared at me as if I were an alien. My mother-in-law's reaction was even more dramatic. Her jaw dropped, and the report slipped from her fingers, fluttering to the floor. She looked from the paper to me and back again. The expression in her eyes shifted from shock to dawning realization, then to an indescribable explosion of joy and pride. Oh, my God, she gasped, clutching her chest, too excited to form a coherent sentence. Leo, you're in perfect health. My father-in-law, for his part, was equally stunned. He cleared his throat, trying to maintain his patriarchal dignity, but the massive grin spreading across his face betrayed him completely. Ahem. Good. Very good. Knew he had it in him. After all, I picked him out myself. Me? Dad, that's not quite how I remember you reacting when we first met. Chloe, standing beside me, looked torn between laughing and cringing. She probably never expected a simple lab report to have such a profound impact on her parents. And just like that, the massive boulder of anxiety they'd been carrying wasn't just lifted, it was vaporized. My mother-in-law snapped back to reality, rushed forward, and grabbed my hands. Her enthusiasm was 100 times greater than the first time Chloe had brought me home to meet them. My dear boy, my wonderful son-in-law, I was wrong to ever doubt you. I am so sorry. She patted my arm, her eyes shining with that special gleam a mother-in-law gets when she realizes her son-in-law is a prize catch. I knew it. My Chloe has perfect taste. Just look at you. The picture of health. You look like a man who can get things done. I was starting to get embarrassed by the effusive praise. Mom, you're exaggerating. Not at all. Not one bit. She waved her hand grandly. From this day forward, I'm in charge of all your meals. You don't have to lift a finger. Just rest and build up your strength. We need you in peak condition to give me a grandchild by next year. Me? This was not how I saw this playing out. My goal was to reassure them, not to launch them into full-scale Operation Grandbaby mode. That night, I was treated like a king. Dinner was a special vitality-boosting soup my mother-in-law had brewed herself. Dessert was a plate of imported kiwis, sliced by my father-in-law. When we left, my mother-in-law loaded the trunk of our car with a mountain of supplements she'd bought. Exotic herbs, wild-caught sea cucumbers. So much that I thought she might have cleaned out an entire health food store. Staring at the pile of love in our trunk, Chloe and I looked at each other, a shared expression of helpless amusement on our faces. Congratulations, Mr. Foster, Chloe said, leaning against the car door, a teasing glint in her eye. You've officially been upgraded to a protected national treasure. I sighed, starting the car with a look of mock despair. I have a feeling, I said, that my life is about to get a lot more complicated. I could already picture my future, a daily gauntlet of herbal soups and my mother-in-law's expectant gazes. But as I glanced over at Chloe, who was laughing so hard she had tears in her eyes, I couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, it was all worth it. 6 after the emergence of the textbook specimen lab report, my status in my in-laws' house underwent a seismic shift. Before, their looks said, well, he seems to treat our daughter right. Now, their looks said, my God, he's our family's most precious asset. The most immediate change was that my mother-in-law launched a culinary takeover of our kitchen. Every day, she'd show up with new, elaborate dishes, all under the guise of nutritional support. It effectively put me, a man who took pride in being a stay-at-home husband and chef, out of a job. My biggest daily challenge was figuring out how to finish all the food she brought over. Chloe found this hilarious. More than once, she patted my expanding waistline and joked, "Careful, Leo. At this rate, you're going to go from textbook specimen to plus-size model." All I could do was protest weakly. As for Dylan Vance, my in-laws never mentioned his name again. It was as if he'd never existed. On one occasion, a clueless relative at a family gathering brought him up, mentioning that Dylan had started his own investment firm and was looking to partner on a project with Chloe. My mother-in-law didn't even look up from her plate. She just calmly placed a piece of fish in my bowl. "A partnership won't be necessary. Our Chloe is much too busy. Besides, we have more important things to focus on right now." The relative, curious, asked, "Oh, what's that?" My mother-in-law glanced at me, a mysterious smile on her face. "That's a family secret. Top secret." The relative, rebuffed, awkwardly dropped the subject, and I, amidst the knowing smiles of the entire family, just shoveled another bite of rice into my mouth. It was a strange feeling being the family's secret weapon. Just when I thought life would settle into this cozy, slightly ridiculous routine, Dylan made another move. This time, he didn't bother with chance encounters or sending gifts. He came right from my home turf, my professional domain. I received a call from an unknown number one afternoon. "Hello, may I speak with Mr. Leo Foster?" The voice on the other end was polite and professional. "This is he." "Mr. Foster, my name is Alex Chun, and I'm the executive assistant to the chairman of Polaris Capital. We are organizing a high-profile corporate dinner and are looking to engage a premier private chef to design and execute the entire menu. We've heard that you have a reputation in culinary circles as the ghost chef, and we were hoping you might be interested in taking on the event." Polaris Capital? My eyebrows shot up. That was the name of Dylan's new firm. So this was his game. He was going to challenge me in the one area where I was supposed to be untouchable, the source of my pride. This Alex fellow laid it on thick. The ghost chef. I'd never even heard that nickname myself. They'd clearly done their homework. They knew that while I didn't work in any restaurant, I had a reputation in a small, exclusive circle as one of the best. Dylan's strategy was clever. If I refused, he could spin it as the so-called ghost chef being a fraud, unable to handle a real high-pressure event. It would be a blow to my ego. If I accepted, he became my client, my boss. He could make impossible demands, criticize my food, and humiliate me in front of all his important guests. His plan was to turn me, the celebrated chef, into a flustered caterer on his stage, all while Chloe watched. It was a brilliant, cruel move. I could almost picture Dylan on the other end of the line, smiling with the satisfaction of a predator who has cornered his prey. But he'd miscalculated one thing. There was nothing I, Leo Foster, enjoyed more than tearing up someone else's script. I chuckled softly into the phone. "Mr. Chun, is it? First, thank you for the offer. But the ghost chef is a bit much. I'm just a guy who likes to cook." I paused and shifted my tone. "However, I will admit this event sounds interesting, but I have my own rules when I take on a client." "Of course, Mr. Foster. We're listening." First, I designed the menu. The client gets no say, other than providing the theme of the event and a list of guest allergies. Second, the kitchen is my territory. From sourcing ingredients to hiring staff, the client does not interfere. And third, I said, my voice hardening slightly, and this is the most important part, my fee is very, very high. Silence on the other end. I named a number. It was a figure that would make the executive chef of a 3 Michelin star restaurant blush. Alex Chun audibly gasped, Mr. Foster, that quote is too expensive." I laughed. "Mr. Chun, you should know that true craftsmanship can't be measured in dollars. I'm not charging that price because the food is worth that much. I'm charging it because my time is worth that much. Of course, you're free to decline. The city is full of chefs. You'll find someone else." I moved to hang up. I knew Dylan would agree. This wasn't about saving money. It was about humiliating me. He wouldn't back down now and lose his chance. He was trapped. Sure enough, just as my thumb hovered over the end call button, Alex's frantic voice came through. Wait, Mr. Foster, please don't hang up. I need to consult with our chairman. Fine, I said, giving him an out. You have 10 minutes. If I don't hear from you in 10 minutes, the offer is off the table. I ended the call and tossed my phone aside, turning my attention back to my succulents. Chloe emerged from her home office with a glass of water for me. Polaris Capital? She asked. She'd clearly overheard. Yep, I nodded. Looks like our friend Dylan hasn't given up yet. And you're actually considering it? Chloe's brow furrowed with worry. You know it's a trap. I know. I pulled her down onto the sofa, next to me, and wrapped an arm around her. Relax. Well, have you ever known your husband to lose? I tapped the tip of her nose. He wants to beat me in my own arena. Let him try. Frankly, I'd like him to see just how little his precious money and status impress me. My phone rang at the 8-minute mark. It was Alex Chun. Mr. Foster, our chairman, has agreed to all of your terms, he said, his voice laced with the agony of someone who has just approved an impossibly large expense report. Excellent. I stood up and walked to the balcony, looking out at the city below, my voice calm and confident. A pleasure doing business with you. When I hung up, I turned to see Chloe watching me from the living room. Her eyes were sparkling. Honey, she said, giving me a thumbs up. That was hot. I grinned. Hearing my own wife say I was hot, that felt better than any paycheck. All right, Dylan, your challenge is accepted. But I wonder, when the big night comes, who's really going to be embarrassed? The Polaris Capital dinner was held in the top-floor ballroom of a 5-star hotel. Dylan had spared no expense, booking out the entire level. My team and I arrived 5 hours early to take over the kitchen. My team wasn't made up of strangers. They were friends I'd made over the years, people who share my passion for food. There was a master pastry chef who trained at Le Cordon Bleu in Paris, a dim sum master who lived a quiet life in an old part of the city, and a procurement specialist, my sorcerer, a man so obsessed with quality he was practically a fanatic. Individually, we all looked like a bunch of misfits. But together, in a kitchen, we were an army. The hotel's executive chef tried to throw his weight around at first, but a single stay out of my way or get out of my kitchen, look for me, sent him scurrying. In my kitchen, there's only one king. Alex Chun, representing the client, hovered nearby. He repeatedly tried to get a peek at our menu and prep stations, but my sorcerer, a 6'4" bear of a man with a bushy beard, politely used his massive frame to block the view every time. Sorry, Mr. Chun. Mr. Foster prefers not to be disturbed while he's in his creative process, the big man rumbled, a deceptively friendly smile on his face. Alex, defeated, retreated to a corner and started furiously texting someone. I ignored him. My entire focus was on the ingredients laid out before me. Wagyu beef from Australia, blue lobsters from France, white truffles from Italy, and wild mushrooms flown in that morning from the Pacific Northwest, still damp with dew. I had sent my sorcerer on a global mission to acquire these, calling in every favor he had. Dylan wanted to crush me with his money. I was going to show him what real, money-can't-buy quality looked like. The dinner began promptly at 7. The guests trickled in, a glittering assembly of New York's business elite. Through a crack in the kitchen door, I saw Chloe. She was wearing a stunning, simple black gown, her hair swept up, revealing the graceful curve of her neck. She wore no extravagant jewels, just a pair of simple pearl earrings, yet she seemed to glow, a beacon of elegance in the crowded room. She was surrounded by a small group of colleagues, handling the conversation with her usual effortless grace. Dylan, as the host, was the center of attention. He moved through the ballroom with a glass of champagne in hand, a portrait of success and charm. Every so often, his eyes would dart toward Chloe, a look of unmistakable possessiveness in them. He shot a glance toward the kitchen, a smirk playing on his lips. He probably thought his plan was unfolding perfectly. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. The first course was the amuse-bouche. I didn't go for some overly complex, trendy creation. I sent out a single, perfect poached quail egg on a nest of fried leeks with a single drop of truffle oil. When the waiters placed the delicate dish in front of the guests, a brief hush fell over the room. Many of them looked confused. This was the work of the legendary, astronomically expensive ghost chef? A single egg? A self-satisfied smirk appeared on Dylan's face. He was about to make a comment to guide the room's opinion. But just then, An elderly gentleman at the head table spoke up. "My word," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "The texture is perfect. The yolk is warm and liquid, but the white is firm. This requires precision, timing down to the second. This is the work of a true master." The man was Arthur Vance, a renowned food critic and a legend in the New York culinary scene. When he spoke, people listened. Everyone fell silent and, picking up their forks, took a tentative bite. The next moment, a wave of hushed, astonished murmurs swept through the ballroom. "This is unbelievable. How can a simple egg taste like this? The flavor is so intense, yet so clean." Dylan's smirk vanished, replaced by a rigid mask. He probably hadn't counted on having one of the city's most respected food critics in attendance, a man who could completely shift the narrative with a single sentence. Mr. Vance set down his fork, his eyes shining as he looked toward the kitchen. "I must ask," he called out, "who is the brilliant chef behind this? Might we meet him?" Alex Chen's face went pale. He hurried over to Dylan's side and whispered something in his ear. Dylan's expression darkened. "I didn't go out. Instead, I spoke into my headset, giving the next command to my team. Fire the main." The second course was a fusion of East and West. Seared A5 Wagyu cubes with freshly shaved white truffle. I'd had the highest grade of Australian beef cut into perfect, uniform cubes, seared at an incredibly high temperature to create a perfect crust while leaving the inside meltingly tender, and then topped with paper-thin slices of Alba white truffle. When the silver cloches were lifted, an intoxicating aroma flooded the ballroom. The scent, a heady mix of seared fat and the earthy perfume of the truffles, made everyone in the room's mouth water. "Good Lord, is that Alba truffle?" a young man who looked like a tech billionaire exclaimed. "The harvest was terrible this year. It's impossible to get. And the sear on this Wagyu is flawless. 1 second more and it would be tough, 1 second less and it would be raw." The chorus of praise was like a series of slaps across Dylan's face. His meticulously planned public execution had turned into my one-man show. He had become a schmuck who paid a fortune for me to dazzle all of his most important business contacts. I could imagine his mood was darker than the balsamic glaze on the plate. And me? I was in the kitchen, calmly enjoying a bowl of simple chicken noodle soup my team had made just for me. The best way to defeat a man like Dylan isn't to outtalk him. It's to enter his world, the one he thinks he controls, and completely, effortlessly dominate it. Dylan thought his money and his status gave him power over everything. But he was about to learn that some things, like true passion and a decade of relentless dedication to a craft, can't be bought. The dinner continued. Course after course emerged from the kitchen, each one a masterpiece. A deconstructed gazpacho that looked like a clear tomato consommé, but exploded with flavor. Lobster cooked sous vide until it was impossibly tender, retaining all its natural sweetness. And for the grand finale, a dessert I called Winter's Breath. It was a delicate, hollow sphere of spun sugar, thin as glass, filled with dry ice and a scoop of jasmine sorbet. When the waiters gently cracked the sphere open with a tiny silver hammer, a fragrant white mist spilled out across the table, a moment of pure culinary theater. The ballroom erupted. Everyone was on their feet, applauding the dessert as if it were the climax of an opera. Camera flashes went off as people scrambled to capture the stunning creation. Arthur Vance, the critic, was flushed with excitement. He grabbed Dylan's arm and exclaimed, "Dylan, my boy Dylan, you haven't just hired a chef tonight. You've introduced a god to New York. This Mr. Foster is a true artist, a maestro. Whatever you paid him, it wasn't enough. It was worth every penny and more." Dylan's face was no longer just grim. It was a canvas of shock, rage, humiliation, and profound defeat. He had never dreamed that his scheme to shame me would turn into my coronation. He watched as his guests, the very people he'd invited to witness his triumph, were now falling over themselves to get my contact information, desperate to book a private dinner. He watched Chloe, the woman he was trying to win back, standing in the crowd with a look of pure, unadulterated pride on her face, a smile that outshone every crystal in the ballroom. He finally understood. He had lost, utterly and completely. After the dinner, as the guests began to depart, still buzzing with excitement, I sent my team home. I stayed behind to oversee the final cleanup. I changed out of my chef's whites and walked out into the now empty ballroom. Only Dylan remained. He was sitting at the head table in the dark, the glittering skyline of the city spread out before him through the floor-to-ceiling windows. In the darkness, his silhouette looked small and defeated. He heard my footsteps, but didn't turn around. "You knew, didn't you?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Knew what?" I walked over to the table and poured myself a glass of water. "You knew what I was planning. You've been playing me this whole time." "I wouldn't say playing you," I said, taking a sip of water. "I was just doing my job. You were the one who made it into a game." He suddenly spun around to face me, his eyes bloodshot and wild. "Who the hell are you? You're not just some simple house husband. No one who just likes to cook can do what you did tonight. No one has access to those kinds of suppliers." "I'm just a guy who likes to cook," I repeated, looking him straight in the eye. "The difference is, I take it a little more seriously than most." "I don't believe you," he snarled, like a cornered animal. "You're a wolf in sheep's clothing. You have some other agenda for being with Chloe." Looking at him then, I just felt a wave of pity. "Dylan," I said, setting my glass down, my voice quiet, "you've had it wrong from the very beginning. You assume Chloe chose me because I have some secret, powerful background, or because I manipulated her. It has never once occurred to you that maybe, just maybe, she chose me because of who I am. She doesn't need a man to give her wealth or status. She has plenty of her own. What she needs is a man who can give her comfort, who can give her companionship. A man who will make her a bowl of soup on a rainy night when she's feeling down. A man who sees past her strength and understands her vulnerabilities. And it just so happens I'm that man. It's that simple." My words were like nails, hammering into his carefully constructed reality. He stared at me, his lips parted, but no sound came out. He had treated love like a business negotiation, a transaction of equals. "You and Chloe are in the past," I said, standing up to leave. "You can't live your life looking in the rearview mirror. It's time to move on, for your sake and for hers." I reached the door, my hand on the handle, just as it swung open from the other side. It was Chloe. She had obviously been waiting for me, too worried to leave on her own. Seeing the tension in the room, she immediately came to my side and took my arm, her presence a silent statement of solidarity. She didn't even look at Dylan. She just said to me, "Let's go home." "Okay," I nodded. We turned and started to walk away together. "Chloe," Dylan's voice called out from behind us. We paused but didn't turn back. Do you love him?" he asked, his voice raw with a final, desperate plea. Chloe was silent for a moment. Then, she turned her head, looked directly at Dylan, and said, her voice clear and steady, "Dylan, meeting Leo was the luckiest thing that has ever happened to me." And with that, she turned away for good, her hand in mine, and we walked out of the ballroom and into the glittering night. I knew, in that moment, that the chapter of our lives featuring Dylan Vance was well and truly over. And the story of Chloe and me was just getting started. The saga of Dylan's disastrous dinner party became a legendary piece of gossip in New York's elite circles. The butt of the joke wasn't me, the mysterious ghost chef, but the ambitious CEO of Polaris Capital who had paid a king's ransom to be upstaged at his own event. The word was that instead of boosting his company's profile, the dinner had backfired spectacularly. The food was so good that none of the guests paid any attention to the actual purpose of the evening. All they could talk about was who the chef was. Even better, several of the investors Dylan had been trying to court ended up tracking me down through back channels to book their own private dinners. As one of them put it to me later, anyone who is willing to spend that kind of money on something as ephemeral as a meal, and to do it with such impeccable taste, is someone I want to be in business with. I still don't quite understand the logic, but I wasn't complaining. I didn't accept any of their offers directly, of course. I forwarded all inquiries to my sourcer, the big, bearded guy, who had now appointed himself my agent. He had a grand time telling billionaires, "Mr. Foster's schedule is booked solid. You can get on the waiting list for late next year." And they loved him for it. And I went back to my life as a stay-at-home husband. With one small change. My father-in-law had become my #1 fan. Ever since the dinner, the look in his eyes had transformed from begrudging approval to outright worship. He would tell anyone who would listen, "My son-in-law, you have no idea. The man is a genius in disguise. His cooking is on another level." He even gave me his prized, handcrafted Italian espresso machine, declaring it a gift worthy of an artist. It was all a bit much. I just cook. How did that make me a hero? A few weeks later, it was my father-in-law's 60th birthday. Chloe had been planning it for a month, wanted to book a large private room at a fancy restaurant to celebrate in style. Her dad shut her down immediately. A restaurant? Why would we go to a restaurant? Is their food better than Leo's? He waved his hand dismissively, officially appointing me chef in residence. We'll do it at the house. Let Leo show off a little. It'll be good for those old cronies of mine to see what real food tastes like. Me? Right, me again. But cooking for family was something I was always happy to do. On the day of the party, their suburban home was buzzing with people. All of Chloe's aunts and uncles, her dad's old army buddies, his former business partners. The house was packed. I'd been in the kitchen since dawn. My mother-in-law tried to help, but I politely shooed her out. Mom, your only job today is to be the life of the party. I've got this. My kitchen, my rules. Chloe tried to sneak in to help, but I stopped her at the door, gave her a quick kiss, and handed her a freshly cut fruit platter. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to look beautiful and keep our guests happy. She blushed, gave me a playful glare, and took the platter out to the living room. I worked methodically, preparing the 16-course tasting menu I'd designed for the occasion. Each dish was not only delicious, but also symbolic. There was a crown roast of pork for prosperity, and a colorful jeweled rice pilaf with pomegranates and pistachios to signify a rich and vibrant life. I was in the middle of searing scallops when the kitchen door swung open. Standing in the doorway was the last person I expected to see, Dylan Vance. What was he doing here? He was dressed in a sharp blazer and dark jeans, his hair perfectly coiffed. In his hand was a gift bag from a notoriously expensive art gallery. His expression was neutral. He saw me, gave a slight nod, and that was it. Behind him was one of Chloe's cousins, looking deeply uncomfortable. Leo, this is a friend of Chloe's aunt, Mr. Vance. He insisted on coming to wish Uncle a happy birthday. I couldn't really say no. I understood immediately. Some clueless relative, trying to curry favor with Dylan, had brought him along to show off their connection to our family. I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped out of the kitchen. In the living room, a hush had fallen as all eyes turned to the uninvited guest. The atmosphere was suddenly thick with tension. My father-in-law's face had hardened. My mother-in-law's smile was frozen in place. Only Chloe remained composed. She stood up, walked over to her father, and gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. Then she turned to the cousin. Aunt Carol, since he's a guest, please find him a seat. Her tone was polite, but unmistakably chilly. Dylan didn't seem to mind the awkwardness. He walked up to my father-in-law and presented the gift. Sir, my apologies for the intrusion. I wanted to wish you a happy birthday. This is a signed Andy Warhol print I acquired at a Sotheby's auction. I hope you enjoy it. A signed Warhol. A collective gasp went through the room. The gesture was extravagant, a clear power move. My father-in-law, a lover of modern art, had a flicker of interest in his eyes, but it was quickly extinguished. He squared his shoulders. I can't accept this. The gift is far too generous. Dylan just smiled. Not at all, sir. I've known Chloe for years. As her father, you are like family to me. It's an honor to celebrate with you. His words were smooth as silk, simultaneously elevating himself and implying a deep, continuing connection to Chloe. Just then, I emerged from the kitchen, carrying a massive, multi-tiered birthday cake, a tower of confectionery art. Dinner is served. Aunts, uncles, friends, family, find your seats. My loud, cheerful announcement shattered the tension. All attention immediately shifted to the spectacular cake in my hands. Wow, look at that cake. It's incredible. It smells amazing. Everyone began moving toward the dining room, and the awkward moment was diffused. Dylan was seated at a table in the corner. He seemed unperturbed, but his eyes kept drifting over to me and Chloe. I knew he hadn't come just to drop off a gift. He was waiting for a chance to reclaim the spotlight, and I had no intention of giving it to him. The dinner was a resounding success. My 16 dishes came out in a steady, impressive stream. Each course was met with gasps of delight. This beef short rib just melts in your mouth. It's divine. The presentation on this sea base is a work of art. Leo, my boy, you're wasting your talent, not opening a restaurant. The compliments flowed freely. My father-in-law, at the head of the table, was beaming, accepting the praise as if he'd cooked the meal himself. Oh, it's just a little hobby of his, he'd say with false modesty, his eyes twinkling with pride. I shuttled back and forth between the kitchen and the dining room, making sure everything was perfect. Chloe was my shadow, handing me plates, wiping sweat from my brow. A perfect partner. The easy, unspoken rhythm between us, the comfortable intimacy, was on full display. Dylan sat in his corner, watching it all. He barely touched his food. With every round of applause for my cooking, his expression grew darker. He couldn't understand it. How could a six-figure Warhol print be upstaged by a home-cooked meal? He didn't get that for a family. The most valuable things aren't measured in dollars. It's the warmth, the comfortable chaos, the feeling of being together, safe and happy, under one roof. As the wine flowed, the mood grew more celebratory. One of my father-in-law's old army buddies, a few drinks in, stood up and slapped the table. "Frank," he boomed, "I'm telling you, the best investment you ever made wasn't your company. It was this son-in-law of yours. He's right. With a guy like this in the family, you're set for life. Here, let's all raise a glass to Leo, to the chef." Everyone stood, their glasses raised, and looked at me. I was a bit overwhelmed, and I raised my own glass of water. I don't drink. "Thank you, everyone. You're too kind. Seeing you all enjoy the food is the only thanks I need." At that peak moment, with a room full of warmth and good cheer, a discordant voice cut through the noise. "He cooks you one meal, and you're all eating out of his hand." It was Dylan. He was on his feet, a mocking smile on his face. "I'll admit, Mr. Foster's cooking is impressive. But if all a man does is putter around a kitchen, what's the difference between him and a hired cook?" His words fell like a bucket of ice water on the party. The room went silent. Everyone stared at him. The cousin who brought him looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. My father-in-law's face was thunderous. He slammed his wine glass down on the table with a loud crack. Chloe stood up, her voice dangerously calm. "Dylan, I suggest you watch what you say." But Dylan ignored her, walking right up to me, his eyes boring into mine. "Leo, I admit I underestimated you. You're good at charming people, at winning them over with these little domestic tricks. But what can you really give Chloe? She's a woman who should be on top of the world, not stuck in a kitchen with you, wasting her potential." I came back and started Polaris Capital. Within 3 months, we'll close our series of funding at a valuation of over $100 million. I can give her the world, a platform to become a true queen of industry. And you, what can you give her? A lifetime of smelling like cooking oil. His voice was powerful, persuasive. When he finished, the room was dead silent. All eyes were on me. I could feel their pity, their curiosity, their morbid fascination. They were all waiting to see how the humble house husband would respond to this brutal takedown from the Wall Street titan. I didn't look at him. I calmly picked up a cloth napkin and wiped my hands. Then I looked up at Chloe, who was standing right beside me. "Honey," I asked her, my voice quiet, "does it bother you? The smell of cooking oil?" Chloe looked at me, and a beautiful smile spread across her face. It was radiant. She shook her head, her voice clear and firm. "No." She reached up, straightened the collar of my shirt, and said softly, "It's the best smell in the world. It's the smell of home." Then she turned to face a stunned Dylan. "Dylan, everything you said sounds very impressive, but you seem to be misinformed. My company's net profit last quarter was $150 million. That platform you want to give me, the one to make me a queen? Thanks, but I already built one for myself, and it's bigger and more successful than yours. As for my husband," she turned back to me, her eyes full of love. Then, in front of everyone, she stood on her toes and gave me a soft kiss on the cheek. "He gives me something that you, and no other man in the world, ever could. He gives me a place where I can finally let my guard down and just be myself. He gives me a home." Her words were a final, devastating blow. Each one hit Dylan like a physical impact. He just stood there, his face ashen. His money, his arrogant offer to save her, had been rendered utterly meaningless, a pathetic joke. But it wasn't over. My father-in-law, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. He stood up and walked over to me, placing a heavy, proud hand on my shoulder. He didn't even look at Dylan. He addressed the whole room. Everyone, since it's my birthday, I have one more announcement to make. He pulled a document out of his jacket pocket. This is a contract my son-in-law, Leo, signed just last week. He unfolded the paper, showing it to the people nearest him. The Michelin Guide has officially offered Leo a position as their global culinary advisor and chief critic for North America. The salary is 8 figures annually, after taxes. Furthermore, the Michelin Group will be creating a culinary grant in Leo's name, a global fund dedicated to discovering and sponsoring talented young chefs like him. My father-in-law's voice wasn't loud, but each word dropped like a bomb. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone, including Chloe, was staring at me as if I'd just sprouted a second head. Her mouth was hanging open. I hadn't had a chance to tell her yet. Dylan looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He staggered back a step, muttering, "No. Impossible. That's impossible. Michelin Global Advisor? Chief Critic? Those weren't just jobs. They were the absolute pinnacle of the culinary world." His Wall Street success, which had seemed so monumental moments before, suddenly seemed small. And that was before you even considered the 8-figure salary. His entire worldview, the one where money equals worth, had just been obliterated. I looked at his broken expression, feeling no sense of victory, only a quiet finality. I walked over to him and said softly, "There are levels to being a cook, too." Then I turned my back on him and walked over to my wife and her parents, who were still in shock. "Dad, Mom, happy birthday." And there we stood, a family, surrounded by the stunned, envious, and bewildered gazes of our guests, smiling under the warm lights of our home. I don't know when Dylan left. All I know is that from that day on, he vanished from our lives completely. Megan told me he flew back to the States the very next day, leaving Polair's capital in the hands of his subordinates. I guess he needed some time to process the comprehensive, cross-cultural beatdown he'd received. As for me, my life got a lot noisier after my father-in-law's press conference. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Media outlets, food magazines, TV shows, everyone wanted a piece of the new celebrity chef. My self-appointed agent, the bearded giant, was in heaven. And in the midst of all that chaos, I made a decision that shocked everyone. I turned down all the interviews, the commercial offers, and even the official induction ceremony Michelin wanted to hold in Paris. My response to their headquarters was simple. I'll be the advisor, and I'll be the critic, but I will do it all remotely. I'm not leaving my home. I'm not leaving my kitchen. To my surprise, they agreed. They even sent a team to New York to install a state-of-the-art telepresence and tasting setup in my home kitchen. And so, I became the first ever remote global advisor in the history of the Michelin Guide. Everyone thought I was insane to turn my back on that kind of fame and fortune just to stay in my little kitchen. Everyone except Chloe. That night, she was curled up against me in bed. "Any regrets?" she asked softly. "You gave up a chance to be on the world stage." I tap her nose. "What's so great about the world stage? It's not as good as my home stage." "For me," I said, "the only stage that matters is our kitchen. The only audience that matters is you. And the only award I need is hearing you say, 'That was delicious.' As long as I have that, I have everything." She didn't say anything, just snuggled deeper into my arms that I knew she understood. We were the same, her and I. We weren't chasing the superficial glamour the world had to offer. We were chasing a real, quiet, and steady happiness. Money, status, fame, we could earn those things on our own. But a home, a true partner, and the warmth of a shared meal. That was the kind of luxury you couldn't buy. 6 months later, Chloe and I went to the doctor and came back with a new kind of report. An ultrasound. On it was a tiny bean-sprout-shaped shadow. 8 weeks, the doctor said. Perfectly healthy. We stood in the hospital hallway for a long time, just holding that flimsy piece of paper and looking at each other. Then at the exact same moment, we both broke into huge, happy grins. On the way home, Chloe tucked the ultrasound photo into her purse as if it were the most precious object in the world. "Honey," she said suddenly, "who do you think the baby will look like?" I thought for a moment. Hopefully, they get all their looks from you. As for their personality, half you, half me. Your strength and decisiveness. Let's call it passion for life. And their cooking skills, she pressed. "Oh, that has to come from me," I said, dead serious. The Foster family culinary legacy must be passed down. She laughed, a bright, happy sound. Outside the car window, the sun was shining. Life was good. I held the steering wheel, glancing at the amazing woman beside me, my heart so full I thought it might burst. I suddenly remembered Megan's question from so long ago. The one that got away is back. Doesn't that bother you? Now I had a better answer. It didn't bother me. Because when you're lucky enough to have the moon, you don't waste your time looking at the faint, distant glow of someone else's faded star. Chloe was my moon, my bright, brilliant one and only, and I was her astronaut, happy to spend my life just basking in her light. Epilogue. 1 year later, it was my father-in-law's birthday again. The party was at our house again. I was the chef again. The only difference was the tiny new assistant in the kitchen. My son Noah, nicknamed Noli. He was decked out in a miniature chef's coat and hat I'd had custom-made, happily gnawing on a carrot stick. Chloe stood nearby, wiping drool from his chin and giving me a look. Leo, are you sure this is a good idea? He doesn't even have all his teeth yet. Of course, I said gravely. The training starts now. It's a family tradition. As we were laughing, the doorbell rang. Chloe went to get it. Standing on our doorstep was her friend, Megan. She wasn't alone. Beside her was a nervous-looking man laden with gift bags. Chloe, Leo, master of the culinary universe, Megan said, her voice a mixture of awkwardness and flattery. Hope we're not interrupting. My husband, she said, nudging the man forward, heard it was your dad's birthday and insisted on coming to pay his respects. I recognized the man. It was Megan's husband, the same one who had been so certain I was just a placeholder. Before I could say anything, my father-in-law, who had fully embraced his role as doting grandfather, ambled out from the living room. He glanced at Megan's husband, then back at Megan, and cleared his throat. Well, you're here now. Might as well come in. But try not to bring such a crowd next time. The kitchen is a bit small. Then he added, just loud enough for everyone to hear. After all, not just anyone gets to eat my son-in-law's cooking. Megan's husband's face turned a brilliant shade of crimson. Chloe and I caught each other's eye, both trying and failing to hold back our laughter. Her dad, the proud, protective old man. He really was one of a kind.